Now, can you hear me? Joanna, if you're on, let me know if you can hear me. And if anyone is watching from YouTube, please hop on to the comments. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. I will back up if it comes down to it. Let's see. I was trying to test my own audio. Oh, okay, good. We have audio. I'm going to put YouTube back on mute. Sorry about that, Joanna. We'll back up. We'll start over from the beginning. I apologize, folks. We are going to be heavily editing this broadcast. Thank you so much for your patience with me. As I was saying on the first take where there was no audio, hopefully this won't be an issue for very much longer going forward because I'm making some big changes to some stuff, but you have to stick around for the announcements at the end to catch all of that. But welcome to tonight's broadcast. I'm kind of glad we had these hiccups because now what I can do is like back the truck up and start all over fresh from the top without the interruptions. So hold on just one moment. I'm going to make sure. Looks like we are broadcasting just fine on YouTube. I'm going to pop it back on to Facebook. I'm going to grab my notes, scroll back up to the top, and we'll dive in and start fresh on all of it. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the broadcast, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is the new moon in Sidereal Sagittarius guided intention setting workshop for the new moon, January 13th or thereabouts, depending on where you're at on the planet. I'm Phaedra. For those of you who might be new to the broadcast, I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick Physick Astrology, and I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice. And the idea is helping you reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why it is you came in to this life to begin with. And my aim really is to offer you guidance on how you can consciously use the energy of the transits to affect your lives in a positive way. And so with the new moon, what that means is setting intentions, because the new moon is when we start things. That's when we make initiations. And so tonight what we're going to be doing is talking about the astrology of the coming new moon in Sidereal Sagittarius. In the first part of our broadcast, in part 2, we're going to talk about which house this is falling into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. And then in the third part of the broadcast, we're going to delve into the archetypes and themes of Sagittarius and some fun and exciting prompts for inspiring you around what you can set intentions around this evening. So welcome to the broadcast. I only just started recording, so I hope we don't need the recording on my end. I apologize for that. We are working with the Fagan-Bradley zodiac on this broadcast, so if you do not have your Fagan-Bradley natal chart, you'll want to get that from mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools. If you need to look up your sidereal sign placements, particularly we're interested in your rising sign, but you can do these practices for your sun sign as well. And tonight what we're going to be doing is exploring your big why. What it is you're really aiming for and what you need for your expansion. For instance, what lesson would most serve your growth? That's what we're going to be kind of digging into tonight, the meat of our intention setting this evening. So let's talk for this first part a little bit about this particular new moon in Sagittarius. It's got some interesting energy to it, kind of a mix of energies. And I'm looking at the chart here while I talk about this, just because, I don't know, it really kind of pulls me in, this particular chart. It's really kind of very simple in a way, but it's very destabilizing, I guess is a good word for it. Our new moon is in Sagittarius, in the analytic degree of Sagittarius, so not necessarily a particularly strong degree. Our ascendant ruler, Pluto, is conjunct the new moon. And of course, Pluto signifies intensification. Pluto is about death, transformation, rebirth, wealth, things like that. The underground, the criminal element, right? Pluto conjoins the new moon, so he's right on top of both of our luminaries. That's very intense. This new moon has the potential to be incredibly transformative, but also potentially incredibly destructive because of that. Jupiter, of course, the planet of expansion, ruling this new moon from his sign of fall. So here he is, potentially expanding things, but not necessarily in a good way, not necessarily in a helpful way, and potentially in a way that could cause problems for us. So that's something to be aware of while we move through this new moon energy. But it is highly transformative, highly potentially destructive, and Jupiter expanding things is not, there's a risk that that could play out badly. And one way of potentially experiencing that is too much of a good thing, right? I don't know that that's necessarily good things being much of a risk with this energy that we're seeing, because there's so much explosive, conflicting, aggressive type of dynamic set up in this chart. But we could definitely see outsized expressions of Jupiter, excess, extravagance, things like that might be signatures of it. I don't know that we'll necessarily experience a lot of extravagance around this, but definitely excess. Jupiter is squaring Uranus. And of course, Uranus is the planet of sudden events, surprises, accidents. So this is potentially hugely explosive energy. Insanely unpredictable energy with this square taking place. We have Venus trying to help out, approaching Uranus by trine, bringing the potential for sudden good fortunes, at least in some kind of small way, unexpected allies coming into the picture, the altruistic instinct taking over, or at least being more able to be easily tapped into. So there's some ways that this can play out, and we might still see some small peaks of beneficial energy playing out, supportive or helpful energy playing out, but maybe not on the big way that we would want to see with Jupiter's involvement. We have, I think, as a helpful influence here, Mars squaring Saturn. Mars, of course, approaching conjunct to Uranus. So this is, again, highly explosive, highly confrontational, highly impulsive and aggressive and conflict-oriented types of energy. But with that square to Saturn going on, Saturn is going to be able to frustrate Mars a little bit, to block its energetic expression potentially, reining in Mars's ability to act, or providing some sort of obstacle or obstruction, or just locking into this phase of conflict for a little bit until things can be settled. Now, in terms of a new moon, that's not necessarily very exciting energy to be working with. I think there's some ways that we can tap into and harness the energy of this new moon in beneficial ways. Just know that it's a really challenging new moon. There's a huge potential for destructive conflict and for the types of transformation events that destructive conflict can bring about. The transformations are usually good, they're usually beneficial in the long run, but they're almost always, when we're talking about Pluto, painful and uncomfortable, and sometimes flat out devastating. So this Mars approaching conjunct with Uranus takes place exact on January 20th, so just a week after our new moon event, at which point that square from Saturn will be less in play. So Saturn will be at that point less able to exert a reining in type of influence on Mars's more aggressive tendencies. So just be aware that when that impulsiveness reaches its peak, potentially because of the conjunction between Mars and Uranus, Saturn will no longer be as helpful at reining in Mars's bad behavior. So just be aware of that. This new moon also activates the December 14th solar eclipse in Scorpio. So if you, as a reader or listener or watcher of the broadcast, if you have a planet, a personal planet, or point like an angle at 28 degrees of any of the fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, or Aquarius, just know that solar eclipse in Scorpio probably affected you personally, and that this new moon is going to reactivate that eclipse event or theme, circumstances, whatever that condition is that eclipse has brought about for you. It's going to reactivate it in the days around this new moon and bring up either further development, or you'll see it transition into the next stage of development or the next stage of its unfolding. Whatever it is for you, just know that you'll be moving into or experiencing the next significant phase of it right around now, in addition to potentially feeling this new moon in Sagittarius energy on top of it. So if that's you with Scorpio from the December 14th eclipse, it could be kind of a double whammy new moon in that sense, where you're dealing with both new moons at once. But let's talk about how these planetary signatures in this chart can be felt. This is potentially an explosive environment, explosive circumstances, highly volatile energies that we're dealing with. There's a risk of accidents. There's a risk of impulsive behavior. There's a risk of really intense power struggles. There's a risk of potentially a new wave of death. And I think that is honestly, from our perspective here in the United States, pretty obviously related to how we're experiencing the current global pandemic. There's the potential for highly impulsive acts of destruction, of the sudden breaking of commitments or agreements or contracts. Okay? And I would also state that this is not a good time to make a contract. So making or breaking of agreements in the days around this new moon could affect social status. And I will say that that could be for good or ill. It just kind of depends on the nature of your situation, your experience, and how it unfolds for you. But I would say it's not a good time to enter into a contract. If that's something that you're facing right now, try to kick the can, if you can, until after our first Mercury retrograde of 2021, which will end on the 21st of February. He's coming up to station retrograde at the end of January, so just in a few short weeks. And by the day after Uranus stations direct on the 14th, we will be in the opening shadow of this first Mercury retrograde of the year. And so ideally, wait until late February or very early March to begin Mercury-related or Mercury-ruled activities, and that includes contracts, agreements, negotiations, anything like that. If for some reason you're unable to avoid signing a contract or entering into an agreement right now, what I would urge you to do is try to make it a short-term agreement with a window of opportunity in early March where you can renegotiate your contract, renegotiate the details of the arrangement, just because it's not a good time for entering into agreements. I wouldn't recommend it at this point if you can all help it. Partly because of the nature of this chart for the new moon, partly because we're approaching the shadow of Mercury's retrograde, partly it's due to these ugly squares between our Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury grouping in Capricorn and our conjunction of Mars and Uranus in Aries. That square is not, it doesn't speak well for long-term agreements to not go south or go sour in some way. Okay. Now, there is a signature with this new moon of an influential person playing a major role. Someone who is maybe in an authority position or an authority figure, or someone who just plays an outsized role in your life. They may be an influential person in the events taking place at this new moon or in the opportunities that arise at this new moon. And this person may also be highly persuasive. They may be highly persuasive in trying to exert their influence or steer the outcome in a direction that's favorable to them. And I call that out because given your particular situation, that outcome or influence may or may not be beneficial to you or supportive of the outcome you envision or desire for this new moon. If it's in alignment, great, you have a powerful ally on your team. If this person's desires or wishes are not in alignment with yours, then that's something you're going to want to be wary of as well, that they may be especially persuasive in their attempts to influence your decision making or your actions to serve in their benefit as opposed to your own. And I would warn you, that's not necessarily a good thing for you to allow yourself to be steered into doing. Now, that being said, I do think that with this new moon and the energy that we have surrounding it, what I do see is the potential for us to kind of instinctually know what to do, instinctually know the right path, the right decision, the right choice, the right way forward. And acting on that instinct, I think, will benefit us. Just allow your gut to steer you and trust the messages and the communications that you get from your more instinctual nature at this new moon, and let that steer you in the proper course. Okay. Now, there are some ways that I think we can use this new moon to our advantage, and that's, of course, what the guided intention setting is all about, right? So ways that we can use this. Now, in the days around this new moon, what I would encourage you to do is to look for opportunities to increase your wealth, your power, your influence, or your esteem. But I would encourage you to do this with integrity. Okay, we can do all of these sorts of things without integrity. I would encourage you to do them with integrity. That will serve you far better, far longer, to act from a place of integrity. This is a new moon where you have an opportunity to transform your relationship with wealth and abundance. You have the opportunity to transform your relationship with possessions, with the resources of the family. You have an opportunity to transform your self-esteem. You have an opportunity even to give birth to a new system of values, to give birth to a new family, perhaps a family of your choosing rather than a family of your birth. Perhaps a family that is in alignment with your values rather than the birth family that we find ourselves in, right? The values of the birth family don't necessarily always align with our personal values, right? And so this is an opportunity to create a new family for yourself, but one that is of your choosing, okay? And that way transform your experience of family. And then finally, and this is, I think, kind of the golden nugget in this new moon, that we have this opportunity to get creative because there's this intense generative urge around this particular new moon. There's an opportunity to give it expression through creating using the resources that we have at hand. This is a new moon that says, no, you don't have access to your partner's resources. You need to make do with what you have. Like a MacGyver situation, or like the incredible folks at NASA trying to solve problems on the moon, right? Like you have to work with what you have at hand. And you have to make that solve your immediate problem, whatever that immediate problem is. And this is a new moon energy that invites us to do that very exact thing, to work with what we already have at hand, to work with our existing set of resources, and to get creative in how we recombine them, get creative in how we bring them together in new ways to get new and different results that are more directly effective to what we're trying to deal with in this moment. Work with what you have on hand. And so with that in mind, I'm going to move on to part 2 of our conversation, which is talking about which house this particular new moon falls into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign and what the themes of those houses are. So we'll dive into that, but as you have questions about the new moon or about the astrology of it or about what we're doing tonight, please let me know in the comments what your questions are. I'm going to scroll through some of these comments and see if there's any that I missed or if they're all from earlier when we were having our technical difficulties. Yeah, we had issues with sound, and Tendai was saying it came on at the end for sure, and then I totally interrupted the broadcast trying to fix things and had to restart it all. It looks like we're okay. I'm going to test. Yep, there's sound at YouTube. I can't tell if there's sound at Facebook because it used to never mute the audio on the broadcast, but now it mutes it for you, which thankfully that's nice, but I can't check to make sure that the audio is working or not. But let's dive in. Let's dive into talking about which house this falls into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. So for Aries, starting with the first sign of the zodiac, this of course is a 9th house new moon for you. The 9th house related to higher education, to long distance travel, to long distance communication. So things like publishing and broadcasting, anything involving large audiences or transmitting information or content or material long distances. And the 9th house also has to do with religion, philosophy, law, higher thinking, things like that. Immigration, foreigners and our interactions with them. Taurus, if you have Taurus rising, this of course is an 8th house new moon for you. So that has to do with other people's money, other people's resources that are at your disposal, investment earnings that you might have access to, taxes, inheritance, insurance, those sorts of things. Now that could be taxes that you owe or taxes that you're due to have refunded to you. When we're talking about insurance, it could mean premiums that you owe, or it could be insurance claims that are due to be paid out to you. And when we're talking about other people's resources, it could be investments from them, or it could be loans, it could be debts that you have to repay. It can also include bonus and commission income. So if in your line of work you earn money through bonus or commission, if you have Taurus rising, that could be something coming up for you at this new moon, an opportunity for some bonus or commission income possibly. And then the 8th house also relates to a lot of the themes that we've been talking about tonight: death, rebirth, transformation, the occult. The 8th house has to do with psychology, right? Our underlying motivations. It also is related to the underworld and criminal activity and investigation and secrets. Kind of some interesting themes when we're talking about the 8th house. For the 7th house, though, that would be if you have Gemini rising. So the 7th house is around partnership, right? Marriage and business partnership. It doesn't matter if there's a financial benefit to both parties. That's exactly the type of partnership that we're talking about, is one that is potentially profitable to either party. Relationships with other people in general are also described by the 7th house, and what we reject about ourselves and tend to project onto other people. And this is specifically when we're talking about the descendant. So 7th house lunations are an opportunity if you like to dive into doing some shadow work in that sense, or if you wanted to begin a new partnership. That could be something you might explore right now. Just know that it would be a very interesting partnership. And if it's one that you would need a contract to delineate the nature of the partnership, I would maybe avoid signing such a contract right now. I would wait until early March. If you have Cancer rising, Danielle says I'm late as usual. Danielle, it's all right, honey. I've started and stopped like 2 or 3 times now because I kept having technical difficulties, which hopefully are going to be a thing of the past very soon. We'll talk about that when I get to the announcements at the end. So it's all right that you're late. Although When we hop off, I would encourage you to go back and re-watch the beginning of the broadcast. I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing, but re-watch the early part where I talk about the astrology of this particular new moon, because it's kind of eh, eh. It's kind of interesting. It's very volatile, and you'll want to probably have a good handle on that. I'm going to get my windows situated back up in front of me. But if you have any questions, Danielle, as we dive in, holler, because we can touch on questions before we get too far into this. Where were we at? Oh, Gemini and 7th house new moons. That's where we were at. So if you have Cancer rising, this is a 6th house new moon. So the 6th house, of course, is work, health, pets, daily routines, things like that, your habits and your schedules, your workaday life, your office life. Danielle says, I'm normal for Scorpio. I don't think normal and Scorpio are words that belong in the same sentence. So I'm just saying that from the Scorpios that I know. For Leo rising, this will be a 5th house new moon for you. So this has to do with creativity and children. It has to do with romance and true love. So not marriage, but relationships of pleasure, of the heart. It has to do with pleasurable activities, things like hobbies or creative endeavors, sports, risk-taking, gambling, things like that. Pleasures of the heart is what the 5th house is all about. For Virgo, this is a 4th house new moon for you. So the 4th house relating, of course, to home and family, to real estate, to our living arrangements, our family life, later life. When we speak of the 4th house relating to parents, it could be one or both. Usually if it's just one parent, our own chart kind of gives a clue as to whether that's the mother or the father. Although the 4th house is typically given to the mother as it's ruled by Cancer. But it could be both parents in some situations as well. If you have Libra rising, of course, this will be a 3rd house new moon for you. So writing, communication, transportation, travel, things that happen in close proximity to where you are in your immediate neighborhood, your immediate environment, your community, not long distance like the 9th house, right? And then the 3rd house can also relate to extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, and neighbors fall into the 3rd house. Okay. And then for Scorpio, of course, this will be a 2nd house new moon. So wealth, possessions, movable assets, earned income, expenses, those sorts of things. Could be family business as well. For Sagittarius, this will be a 1st house new moon. So your birthday new moon, right? It's kind of a wild card new moon that we would encourage you to use in whatever way you feel inspired. But the 1st house typically rules our personality, our identity, our self-expression, our mannerisms, our behaviors, our physical appearance, our style, our role that we play in the world, how we show up in the world, how we interact with the world. Those things are the 1st house. So when you have a new moon there, it's kind of an opportunity to reinvent yourself. And it's usually a great opportunity to give yourself kind of a style makeover, if you like, especially if Venus is in that house with you. And she's there. I would say, honestly, given her favorable aspects at this new moon with Uranus, if you wanted to take that route with your intention setting, if you have Sagittarius rising, if you wanted to use it as an opportunity to give yourself kind of an image makeover or a style makeover, go right ahead. You could have some surprisingly attractive results. And it could be a lot of fun. Be spontaneous. Do something a little unusual, a little avant-garde, maybe. For Capricorn, this will be a 12th house new moon if you have Capricorn rising, or if you're using this for your sun sign. Privacy and seclusion. So activities that are done in retreat, away from the rest of the world. Spiritual practices and spirituality, spiritual beliefs, these are 12th house matters. So our unconscious beliefs, the unconscious mind is 12th house ruled. highly personal or private projects, solo projects, spiritual practices we talked about, institutions of seclusion and the work that we do with them. Those are also ruled by the 12th house. For Aquarius, this will be an 11th house, new moon for you. So friends, organizations, and hopes and dreams, which is one of my most favorite things to use new moons for, to making an initiation towards a hope or a dream. If you have Aquarius rising, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. And then for Pisces rising, this will be a 10th house new moon for you. Career, awards, recognition, fame and achievement, status and reputation. So if you want to push things forward career-wise, you could have a window of opportunity to use this to kind of increase your influence in your field if you have Pisces rising, and that could be a useful way to put this energy to work. But that really wraps it for talking about the signs and the themes of the house for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. I'm going to move into the third part of our broadcast. And as I do that, I'm going to double check on our YouTube stream. See, I started live streaming on Facebook, so most of you know me from Facebook, and that's where most of you join me from, and not quite so much yet from YouTube. Although I'm sure that will improve as I can eliminate the technical difficulties from live streaming to YouTube, which hopefully we'll be doing very, very soon. I'm excited. Got some fun new changes and announcements to share with you all at the end of the broadcast. But let's talk about the themes of Sagittarius and the archetype of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the sign of the archer, right? This is mutable fire. So it's a sign that is both action-oriented and passionate and also adaptable. So we're talking about being action-oriented and initiatory type of action, and passionate around ideals and ideas, and adaptable to new or varied or different experiences, adaptable to new or varied or different ideas. Sagittarian energy is very expansive, it's very open, it's very inviting, it's very friendly and idealistic. It's very fun-loving kind of energy. I actually really enjoy Sagittarian energy. Danielle says, this is what happens when I show up. Well, you know, it's been kind of an evening for that. But I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we are coming into Uranus's station and that we're approaching that early shadow days of the coming Mercury retrograde. And I was looking at my broadcasting schedule, some of my broadcasting schedule this month and next month lines up too perfectly with Mercury retrograde. So I'm going to actually ask y'all to bear with me on those broadcasts, because who knows what will happen during them. Especially since there's going to be some changes to the back end and to the tech and to the processes behind doing the broadcast. So we'll see. I'll appreciate your patience and being my guinea pigs for sure. So Sagittarius, though, this is an energy that seeks understanding, right? And it's looking specifically for an understanding that brings about wisdom. So it represents the higher state, which exists beyond mere knowledge learning, beyond mere book learning. And it gets into the application of that in real life, but also taking it a step further in the mind intellectually. It also represents faith, not only faith in a religious sense, but faith in humanity. Okay? And so one thing that I like to talk about when we're doing the new moon broadcast related to Sagittarius is I like to point out, especially for your contemplation, an observation that Stephen Forrest made in his book, I think it's called The Inner Sky. It's one of my favorite books on the archetypes of the signs themselves, of the zodiac. Especially, it's one of my favorites because Stephen takes the opportunity in that book to do something that I think is quite often neglected in the astrological world, and that is to explore some of the shadow side, less healthy natures and tendencies of each of the signs. And that is where I think we have really untapped potential where we can go really mining for gold is in dealing with how we interact with the shadow nature, because it's unavoidable, right? We all have a shadow nature, and how it expresses through us has a lot to do with our own relationship with it, right? But I think in astrology, we very rarely explore the shadow side of the astrological energies, and he does a really good job in that book. One of the things that he talks about in his discussions on Sagittarius is that he frames Sagittarius as not being the archer, but being the arrow, which is a fascinating way to delve into Sagittarian energy. It's a fascinating perspective to be examining it from. So what does the arrow do? If we're the arrow and not the archer, when we're talking about Sagittarius, what does the arrow do? The arrow shoots high into the air, right? Achieving this incredible vantage point over everything below. And it seeks its destination from that elevated perspective with an absolutely unwavering singularity of purpose. And once it's left the archer's bow, it is committed. There is no place for it to divert to other than to its intended target, or at least to where it was aimed, even if that's off the target, right? There's only one place that arrow can go once it's released from the bow. And so if Gemini, which is the ruler of Sagittarius's zodiacal opposite, or well, not the ruler of it, is Sagittarius's zodiacal opposite. If Gemini is detail-oriented and analytical and specific, then Sagittarius represents that big picture perspective, that zoomed out perspective, that holistic worldview, rather than the zoomed in perspective, right? It's the macrocosmos to the microcosmos. And so ultimately, because it's about the macro, the expanded view, the expanded perspective, the expanded understanding, ultimately, Sagittarius is about the growth of the mind through the expansion of experience, through the expansion of travel, through the expansion of learning, through the expansion of contemplation, through the expansion of experiencing faith in something bigger than ourselves. So it's about the growth of the mind through these various methods of expansion, these various mechanisms for the expansion of it, and then bringing that expanded worldview, that expanded point of view back down to earth, back down to mankind, like the arrow, right? Because once you shoot it, it can't help but return to the earth somewhere. So Sagittarius then is that archetype of the philosopher, the teacher, the free thinker. This is the traveler, the explorer, which can also manifest as the transient or the vagabond, right? But this is the archetype of the priest, the archetype of the lawgiver, the archetype of the benefactor, the archetype of the student, and in some ways of looking at it, the archetype of the father figure. Okay? And so, keeping all of that in mind for this new moon, and keeping in mind the house that Sagittarius occupies in your sidereal natal chart, I want you to consider what is your goal, your desire, or your intention for this house, your Sagittarius house. I was just reading where we're at in the moon gazing journal. I think we already went over the one that I've just turned to, so we'll move on to the next page for today. But considering your Sagittarius house and what is your goal, what is your desire, what is your intention for that house, Ask yourself, what is the big picture for you? Why is this goal or desire important to you? What will it help you achieve? What will you achieve in the having of it, in the manifesting of it, in the initiating of it? What will it help contribute? And what is your ideal outcome for that goal, for that desire, for that intention? What does that ideal outcome look like for you? Ask yourself, are you getting the message across? Keeping in mind, Sagittarius is about communication. It's about the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge, the exchange of wisdom, the exchange of experience, the exchange of culture. Are you getting the message across? In other words, are your actions and your words in alignment with each other? Are they in alignment with your desires for your life? Are they in alignment with your goals and dreams? Or are your actions and your words not in alignment with each other or with those things, with your desires, with your goals, with your dreams? Because if they're not, you're going to hamper your own ability to manifest them, right? So you need to make sure that they are in alignment. Okay. And now I need to find where I left off because I just hit the keyboard and lost my place. Okay, so what new thing can you set about learning which would allow you to manifest that intention or achieve that goal? What new skill do you need to learn? What new information do you need to learn? Okay. What experience do you need to help you move forward in your desire or in your plan? And finally, what new belief would you need to cultivate in order for this to be possible for you? Now, keep in mind, you don't need to address all of these. You don't even need to dig into more than one of them. Hone in on one and go with it. If you can, go with where you feel led, if you feel led in a particular direction. But what you're going to do is you're going to get clear about what it is your intention is that you're setting. You're going to get clear about your desire or your goal for this new moon. And then take a moment to visualize what that is and draw it out. Draw out what it is you want to manifest or achieve in the next 6 months. Think big picture, right? And then finally, I would encourage you, once you're done writing out your intention that you are setting for this evening, to write an affirmation to reinforce your intention. And part of the reason I encourage you to do that, is, especially when we're working with Sagittarius, is because this is about the energy of belief, right? It's about the energy of faith. And affirmations are a great way to help entrain and retrain our beliefs and to help cultivate faith, especially where we might have a deficit of it. And so an affirmation can go a long way towards helping you manifest what it is you want to get out of whatever you start with this new moon. So if you know what it is you're diving into, go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and recap these just quickly, and then I'll be diving in to set my intentions for this new moon. It's going to be kind of fun. All right, so what is your goal, desire, or intention for your Sagittarius house? What's the big picture? Why is that goal or desire or intention important to you? What will it help you achieve? What is your ideal outcome? What does that look like? And consider, are you getting the message across? Are your actions and your words in alignment? Are they in alignment with your desires, with those goals, and with those dreams? And what new thing can you set about learning which would allow you to manifest that intention or achieve that goal? So if there's some new skill or knowledge or education, some certification or license that you need to acquire through higher education, what is it? Okay. What experience would you need to help you move forward, and how could you go about getting that experience? Or what new belief would you need to cultivate in order for this to be possible for you? Okay, so you're going to write down what those things are. And I'm going to do the same. Before I do, I'm going to read to you what it says in today's page of the Moon Gazing Journal. It says, cut your toenails as the moon waxes so that they will not become ingrown. There you go. If you have trouble with ingrown toenails, cut them when the moon is waxing, not waning. Okay? That's how you can avoid ingrown toenails right there. Okay, so everyone take a moment. Write down your intention, your desire, your goal. Describe it. Draw a picture if you'd rather describe it in a picture, and it can be as silly and as goofy and as stick figurey as you want. I find those are still effective in the manifesting of things. I've had that work myself. All right, Gemini, 7th house. How much more do I want to write? If anybody needs more time, take your time. And then when you're done, if you'll share what you're setting intentions around in the comments, that would be amazing. Because I have Gemini rising, this is the partnership house, right? Also relates to business. And I think I will do this practice for myself, focusing on partnership, like long-term committed relationships and what I want to manifest in that regard. But I think I'll do that individually later on after this broadcast. Right now I'm kind of focusing more on the business side of things because I hadn't really considered that I have that opportunity with this new moon to kind of a reinvention of business systems and operations, and that's kind of what I'm in the middle of doing. So I might as well set some intentions around what I want that to look like when it's done. And really what I'm intending is to revamp my business, revamp the systems that I use and the strategies, revamp the operational stuff, revamp the content and how I offer it, revamp the services and all of that. And to do it in such a way that better reflects my principles and values, but also better meets the needs of you as my audience, as my clients, as my customers. And that I really want to streamline things in a way that that's going to require me to recreate them, right? We know that we need to do that during this full moon. But recreate them in a creative way, in an effective way, in a way that invites ease, that streamlines things, that makes them work together more easily and more seamlessly, and invites that same kind of ease into the business processes, into the business systems, into the operations, where things can be automated, where things can be scheduled in advance, things like that. And that's really what my intention is for this new moon. And I have set some of those wheels in place, in motion already. I'm very excited about that. And we're going to talk about some of that when I get to the announcements at the end. Because I've been telling y'all to hold tight and wait for those announcements. And I finally have them ready for you. But this is really what I'm intending to do, is to kind of revamp and reimagine and recreate these things. I've been in business now long enough to see, some of these things work, some of these things don't. Let's moosh things around a little bit. Let's overhaul and change house. And of course, we're coming right into Mercury retrograde, right? Which is a time for revision and reimagining things, redoing things, reworking things. And so that'll be a perfect opportunity. And I do want to apologize because that means that some of y'all are going to end up being a little bit my guinea pigs, but in a way that's good because I rely very much on your feedback on all of this to know what to do and how to arrange things going forward. And that feedback is very, very important to me. And so I want to invite you, if you are doing any intention setting with this new moon in Sagittarius, please share your intention in the comments and let us know what it is you're wanting to bring about for yourself, what you're envisioning for yourself. And what I'll do while you're typing that in is kind of talk a little bit about some of these exciting announcements. There's been a lot of changes lately, and I know that not everyone knows about all of the changes. Some of them I haven't even talked about yet. Some of I've talked about briefly in limited ways, in limited places, and so this will hopefully be an opportunity to get everyone kind of up to speed on some of these exciting changes, because I have been telling you now for a while I'd be switching things up for the new year, and guess what? There's finally more to come on that. And so here we go. So the broadcast, join me live from Patreon beginning the 31st of January. And this is where I know I said we're getting into Mercury retrograde. But I'm going to be transitioning to broadcasting through Patreon to kind of streamline how the broadcasting works. And because it's a way that I can bring back some of the membership benefits that used to be available at the mystickphysick.com website that I haven't been able to offer lately. It'll allow me to bring them back for you. And we're going to kind of slowly roll that out in stages. So for the next couple of broadcasts over the next couple of weeks, I will still be broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. But we will be transitioning to broadcasting live on Patreon starting the 31st. So join me there instead of in the Sidereal Insights Facebook group or on the YouTube channel directly. I will be launching membership levels through the Patreon feed as we kind of roll out these changes. They're there already right now on Patreon. So if you want to sign up and show your support, please, I'll invite you to go ahead and do that. You can do that early. They're ready. That's an option for you. I will be launching that officially later, but you can go check those things out now. I have posted some goodies, and I will be kind of sweetening the deal for that. But there's several different membership levels, and you can choose whichever level works for you to show your support. But I'm beginning that transition now to kind of learn the new platform and to offer exclusive bonus content to you ahead of the actual launch. So head on over to patreon.com/mystickphysick and check it out for access to special features, to bonus content, to special downloads, discounts that I'm offering, and early access to future content from Mystick Physick Astrology. And I will invite you, yes, subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/Mystick Physick Astrology. And best of all, I'm really excited to announce finally that the 2021 Ultimate Astrological Planner is now available at mystickphysick.com/2021. Go check them out. It's available this year in tropical, Lahiri, or Pagan zodiacs. You can choose from day planner and executive planner styles. So definitely go check that out and get your planner ordered. Those of you who are waiting to have your orders filled, just know those are coming, whether you order digital downloads or the actual printed planners. Now that the files are ready, those orders are going to be being filled in the next handful of days. So stay tuned on that. And thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Please like and share the broadcast. Tag a friend if you know someone who could benefit from what we went over while we were doing this live broadcast today. And thank you all so much. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.